under the World Economic Forums recently conducted, it was mentioned that the circular economy, by 2030, the investment will be about 4.5 trillion globally. And I think why we need circular economy, why we need to promote that is to basically to save the planet and create a market opportunity to reduce the carbon footprint as well as the waste productions. So what is circular economy? And basically the waste is designed out and products it still loop back into the production system at the end of the use. So that it can be the 3R, when we talk the 3R concept, it can be applied into here. The growth is decoupled from the consumptions of scarce resources. We try to minimize use of the scarce resources we have in our global resources. The material are kept within the productive use for as long as possible. Market opportunity, looking at the circular economy under the discussions of the World Economic Forum, is looking at innovative products and production. And this is where companies are able to come in to look at the design, packaging, how can we change that, and manufacturing solutions, how can we reduce our waste when we do our manufacturing processes. Second is transforming consumptions. So we had our ITM, right? The Industry Transformation Map. And this is where we need to see how we can change the mindset of the community and changing our productions and more effective to reduce the waste. It was estimated that if we convert 20% of the plastic packaging into a reuse model, that present 10 billion of opportunity. And that was part of the world, the discussion in the World Economic Forums. Example like repair, secondary marketplace, sharing platforms, and all these are the opportunity. And third is recovering value. So this will enable product to be reused and recover of embedded values from the waste. So we don't just throw away to the landfill or to the incineration of waste to energy plant, but is to see how we can reuse at the end of the product life. So one of the case example is one of the Chilean startup. So trying to reuse the plastic bottle. If you see some of our these sanitary liquids, or and they are looking at how to change the mindset of the consumer and how can they reuse back the container. So this vending machine here is, if you there's a RFID code on the bottle. So if you bring your empty container to refill the I don't know what product is this, but if you do correct, right? I think that is one of the detergents, or yeah. And if you will bring the bottle back and then you do a refill, we give you some incentive at a very cheap cost, so that your bottle can be reused again. So you don't need to have another new bottle for that. And circular economy activities in Singapore, I think we just got started in the last few years. But you will see globally, there are quite a number of countries already started in this journey. Singapore has launched our zero waste roadmap. That was in August 2019, and we do have this framework, and this is how we are implementing the framework. If you focus on the Resource Sustainability Act, EPR started in 2020. Mandatory packaging reporting, MPR, started in 2021. And then the food waste going to start, food waste segregations, right, in 2024, and packaging EPR by 2025. So that will be the journey for us to reduce the waste. Okay, so that is the few other concepts on in Singapore Zero Waste Master Plan. One of the strategies is to keep the resource in a closed loop, looking at sustainability, production, consumptions, and waste management. So, and then the three key waste streams are focused on food waste, electronic waste, and packaging waste, because these are a lot of waste we consume in Singapore. Emphasis on productivity solutions. All right, so optimize infrastructure. I think that's important. We also embark on a lot of technology, and there's a lot of startup in the waste sectors. I can see in the last few years, there's a lot of new products based on the Internet of Things, the IT solutions, and to see how we can transform the products, processes to reduce the waste. Recently, this year, we also launched the Singapore Green Plan. And under the Singapore Green Plan, we wanted to reduce the amounts of waste to landfill as per capita per day by 20% by 2026, and with the goal of reaching 30% by 2030. All right. Yeah, if you are interested, you go to the website. I think you can download the Green Plan. And the Green Plan emphasized that we want to halve its 2030 peak greenhouse gas emission by 2050. All right, and long-term aim of achieving a net zero emission as soon as possible in the second half of the century. And the 5 pillars of Green Plan basically is city in nature, sustainable living. We emphasize a lot of energy because the energy is one of the highest costs over here, and highest consumption because of the tropical weather. Green economy, something to support the industry to reduce the carbon footprint, as well as building resilient in future.
If we look at the reasons, the objectives for introducing EPR, the reasons that were valid in 1990 essentially still remain valid. But now in the past few years, a few reasons that my previous speakers already mentioned, one of them was already mentioned, have added to the pressure on governments to introduce EPR. One reason being the sustainable development goals, with the goal of establishing a circular economy. And very concretely and practically, China's waste import ban that was started in mid-2017 and gradually has been tightened and has been completed basically from the beginning of this year. So countries are looking to recycle more domestically, or they essentially have to, and these points can be added now to this older slide here. To recap for those that may not be so familiar with this EPR, so basically the extended producer responsibility holds the product manufacturers or the packaged goods manufacturers responsible for the products or the packaging or both, and responsible for the end-of-life management of this packaging and of the packaging they place on the market. And typically this responsibility, be it organizational or financial, is shared among producers in proportion to their market share of products they put on the market. So if a producer puts on the market 10% of the total market in a certain product group, he will be responsible for 10% of the waste that is being generated. So this is a very simplified, but basic principle for financing or managing 10% of the waste that is being generated. So EPR, when it's introduced, it never goes smooth. And usually this is the case because there are stakeholders involved with very diverging interests and also cultures. And so if producers suddenly negotiate with municipalities or with recyclers directly, there may be conflicts. And the main, one of the main key issues of conflict is who controls these new funds. So who controls these new funds to finance this little, not little, but this negative externality of waste packaging or products that has negative value, that costs money actually to collect and to recycle. So which parties, stakeholders may control these PROs, producer responsibility organizations, or sometimes it is a government fund. Obviously, if it's a fund, it's controlled by the government. If it's a government fund. So, and then another key question for policy answer is who is prohibited from collecting recyclables. If you allow recyclables to be collected, they will, those with a positive value will be collected, the others will not be typically. So this just for recap. If we look at long established EPR regimes in the region, then we have Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea. Taiwan, South Korea, they had some sort of producer responsibility policies in place before everyone else, essentially late 80s, early 90s, and the regimes changed. Japan started in 95 with the packaging recycling law, and obviously in 10 minutes I cannot describe the mechanisms in detail, but I will try to just wrap it up very briefly. So if we look at packaging in Japan, you have a central single organization, JCPRA, which is government controlled, government set up, and essentially also government controlled, which collects funds from producers and finances municipalities, what they collect. There is individual compliance is possible in this system. So individual compliance by producers who take back who have their own return channels for packaging and so on. So that's all possible, but this is a really very delicate and fine-tuned machine, and targets are set every year by the government. So it needs fine-tuning in consideration of how much the municipalities will want to collect or plan to collect and what recycling capacity is there. So it's a very, very delicate system, and that's been in place basically without major changes since 1995. For Japan electronics, there are 3 totally different approaches in place. For large household appliances, it's basically producers have to organize the take back and recycle it themselves, not not having to interface municipalities. Municipalities have no role in that. The same goes for the regime that is in place for computer and monitors. Similar. For small appliances, 20 appliances, there's a separate law, and which does not have an obligation on producers as regards take back. So it's very different. All these approaches have in common that they do not have producers interface with municipalities, with local authorities directly. So it's either the local authority who manages, or it's the producers who have their take-back systems. Taiwan is, as most probably know, a much simpler approach, at least since 1997. It's the EPA is pretty mighty and essentially a manager and regulator of the recycling fund, and is collecting the funds and subsidizing, paying them to recyclers who draw the material back. It's more complex, but just in a few words. South Korea, it is one of the most active countries or most innovative countries, I would say, in coming up with measures, together with France, in new EPR measures, especially in the last few years. One reason being that I think the Chinese waste import ban has, particularly due to the regional proximity, particularly affected the recycling market, and so the government has now done extreme measures to essentially improve the recyclability of packaging, and also now wants to have a recycling market management center that essentially would essentially put price controls for recycled materials. So if we come to the newer regimes of newer EPR regimes, then we have China, and China essentially introduced first standards and regulated the recyclers and tried to formalize the recycling sector. And essentially from 2009 to 2011 tried to deprive the informal sector, or starve out the informal sector, starve the supply for the informal sector of certain appliances, by offering a very generous buyback program. So the TVs, fridges, washing machines, computers, air conditioners, during these 2.5 years, 82 million TVs and fridges were bought back from end users, old fridges, who were basically subsidized to buy a new product. This was government funded with 30 billion renminbi, sorry, and about that, which was quite successful. This should have established or it has established an accredited recycling sector. What happened then afterwards was basically the buyback subsidy expired, and then from January 2013, the VE fund, which was started operations, and the DVE fund was fed by recycling fees charged to producers. But this was only a fraction of the fee, so there were no it was only the treatment fee, not a buyback fee. It's very small, and the system has struggled, I would, pretty early on, because there was insufficient funding, and the funds that the recycling fees charged to producers were never adjusted, so that basically right now I think it's up to 3 years or about, it's a cash flow problem So basically, the recyclers have to wait for 2 to 3 or maybe more years now until they get paid for or they get their subsidies for the items they recycled. Now there have been long discussions and approaches to introduce new legislation. I do not know why the fund was never adjusted, why the fund fees were never adjusted. But now some NDR committees are drafting, apparently drafting new legislation, and let's see how this will turn out. So EPR is now as regards batteries, what the Europeans call portable batteries, the small ones are not covered, but there's a focus in pilot projects on lead acid batteries and ELV, electric vehicle batteries. As regards packaging, it's also something that has, I think, been in legislation since about, well, it was never mandated, but it was desired to have mandatory recyclables. So now from this year, no, was it last year? I think a deposit, not a deposit, a EPR for beverage cartons. So paper-based beverage cartons started. Why this industry was picked is because there are very few suppliers. There are like 4 or 5 global companies who, well, actually even less, that provides the beverage carton packaging. And the other focus that you probably know is all these municipal legislations municipalities are obligated to introduce legislation to separate household wastes very strictly. Shanghai, all major cities have it essentially now. And there's standardized collection, there's standardized sorting labels, and so on. Yeah, whatever. So stop here. India. India, the rules, the EPR rules, whether they were they had e-waste rules in 2011 and plastic waste management rules also from 2011. And it took amendments in 2016 to, well, maybe it was deliberately done, to make them a bit more enforceable. The e-waste rules have gained quite a bit of traction, I think. And the plastic waste management rules are, in my view, still relatively ambiguous as regards targets, as regards approvals, and so on. Their danger or the risk for producers is in India that there might be fines and government enforcement actions. There's this National Green Tribunal which can exert a lot of pressure on the Central Pollution Control Board to enforce regulation, to issue fines, and so on. So there were quite substantial fines proposed in February for plastic for not meeting targets for beverage bottles on 3 companies. So Hong Kong, you might know, which is, yeah, very briefly, it's a very interesting system with the producers purchase recycling labels for a few product categories. And I mean, obviously the city states like Hong Kong and Singapore will have different approaches and different issues. Now, a couple of countries, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, basically, Vietnam, actually I had Vietnam on the other page where there is legislation, but it doesn't seem to be properly enforceable. It's been in place since 2013 and came into force in 2015. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I think it still has substantial teething problems. In other countries, this framework legislation has been in place for quite some time, and definitely the SUPs, the SUPs, or the single-use plastic products, they will be regulated first, I think, before EPR will be introduced in the, it seems to me. To round this issue off, a few policy trends, and many of those that are mentioned here, or almost all of them, they will apply in Korea and in France, and in many other countries as well, but not all of them. So it's with the European SUP directive, single-use products directive, that has, well, the ocean plastics issue and all these issues that have triggered a big trend towards trying to restrict plastics, and now with China's import ban even more. Over packaging restriction, express packaging in China now regulated. Bans on difficult to recycle packaging, also Korea colored PET bottles glued on labels, etc. Yeah, there may be dedicated also EPR schemes for difficult to recycle packaging. So basically packaging that cannot be disposed of in the household waste. So you might have to bring it back to a store or something like this. There's been a tremendous trend towards mandatory DRS, also deposit return systems, where you pay a little a token and get that back when the bottle is returned. That is also triggered by the SUP, in Europe by the SUP directive. Encouraging recyclability, sustainability improvements here. The South Korean recyclability grade assessment. Every package has to, producers have to assess the recyclability, and if it's difficult to recycle, then it has to be labeled difficult to recycle, or it's banned. Modulated modulated recycling fees. All the organizations in all countries in Europe have to, or the PROs, the producer responsibility organizations, have to charge according to the recyclability of packaging, and also for certain electronic products. It's modulated fees which take into account recyclability and other factors, repairability, etc. Sustainability labeling and evaluation along the sustainability development goals, etc. Repairability. France has maximum costs for common spare parts of electronics in proportion to the product price and things like that. It's just it's amazing the amount of regulation that is coming out. Finally, creating demand for recycled materials. Okay, this is something where Korea and France, the tax on packaging without recycled content is not, neither France nor Korea have that. But the UK is just, the draft is out now. So if a plastic packaging does not have 30% recycled content, there will be a tax on it. It's very unclear how this will be charged. It's very unclear. It's supposed to also apply to filled packaging, which means basically packaged goods. How this will be taxed and how you will prove that there is 30% recycled content is still all unclear. Improving separate disposal at source, so that getting consumers to, or end users to, better separate waste. That's basically also, they're happening in many countries where essentially the this should be nationally harmonized recycling sorting labels, nationally harmonized collection categories, and so on, to avoid consumer confusion, to create economies of scale, and so on. So far, it's been often left to municipalities to decide their fractions. Yeah, Yeah, here standardized consumer information. France prohibits now the green dot label, the original green dot label, because it's supposed to, well, it does, I guess, confuse consumers as regards what is recyclable, and it contradicts it's not contradicts, but it overlaps with the French proposed the actual French label. Okay, thank you very much.
So maybe let me just quickly go through what Singapore has done, the initiatives based on the waste management. So back in 2001, we started our national recycling program. That is when the public waste collector provide the recycling bins and collection services to all the housing estates. Yep. And in 2007, we started our Singapore Packaging Agreement. That is also a joint initiative by government, industries, and NGOs to reduce the packaging waste. And the agreement was voluntary, but it's to provide the flexibility for the industry to adopt a cost-effective solutions to reduce the waste. And in 2014, as Prof. Siram has mentioned earlier, that we embarked on this, we implemented this mandatory waste reporting for hotels, malls, industrial premises, conventions, and exhibition centers to help with the reporting and submitting their waste reduction plans. In 2019, we also published our Singapore Zero Waste Master Plan, focusing on the three major food waste, e-waste, and packaging waste. In 2020, last year, we started our EPR program for e-waste, and this year for the mandatory packaging reporting. And for the next coming years, in 2024, we are implementing the mandatory food waste segregations and EPR for packaging by 2025. And I want to highlight some points for the EPR and MPR particularly, as I have engaged some of you producers out there, throughout the past few months that have some issues with the reporting, and I thought it would be good for me to just do a quick highlight, to some of the concerns that you all have. So basically, my sharing objective is to have a quick recap on the EPR, e-waste, and the MPR requirement, and also like to highlight a few key factors to take note, towards preparing the submission. Yeah. So for EPR for e-waste, you probably will have to understand three key major producers, products, and procedures. Okay, for producers out there, you are here because you import, manufacture, engage other parties to manufacture your electronic or electrical products. And of course, you may know this well down that you will have to, based on your imported regulated products, whether it's consumer or non-consumer. And last year you have to register. By 2019 you have to register with NEA, and then this year you have to report your amount of electrical and equipments put to market. And also for regulated consumer producers, you have to finance the PRO appointed by NEA. And for non-consumers, you're required to provide the free take-back services of all their end-of-life equipment from their clients upon request, and submit your report for the e-waste collected and sent for proper treatments to NEA. Okay, and for the products wise, you have to take note of these five major products that consider the regular products, because you have only to report these products as listed by the NEA websites. So I have some companies asking me that they actually import equipments that deals with semiconductors, supporting semiconductors industries, but actually those are not needed in the submission requirement. So there's a lot of confusion out there, which equipment needs to report. And so basically you just have to, based on these five major products that you have to report, and within them, there's also a subdivision of consumer and non-consumer products. And NEA website has a very comprehensive list of what they specified for, and you can actually have a more detailed list out there. And for the procedure wise, of course, last year you have to register with NEA, And then throughout the entire year, last year, you have to keep the records, you know, you have maintain your records and of all your products you supply in Singapore. And then and this year, actually, in fact, yesterday was your submission deadline. And if you will have to do the declarations of your regulated products supplies in Singapore. And for non-consumer products, you have actually, you start to collect your data for this year, and of course also to collect and dispose on other products, you know, for your e-waste products. And next year you probably have to declare the weight of each regulated non-consumer products. So in July onwards, for those producers that, you know, with regulated consumer products, you have to finance a licensed PRO to collect back your e-waste products if you exceed that threshold limit. Okay, the information for the threshold limit is also available in the NEA website, so you can actually refer to those limits. If you exceed those limits, then you have to finance this PRO. Yeah. So you're actually right now at this time. And for the MPR, the packaging reporting, of course, for producers, you have to supply, you know, regulated goods, and then have an annual turnover of more than 10 million, and also import or use specified packaging. This is also stated in the websites by NEA. And of course, be mindful of the exclusion list, because the definition of the regulated goods here, right, means that, you know, anything except this, you have to do the packaging reporting. So, you know, all the things listed here, you do not have to report. And in the gray box here, you know, all the F&B products, vitamins, medical products, you have to report those products. Yeah. And reusable bag, you also have to report here. So maybe for some of you, you ask me, you know, what are the primary, tertiary, you know, secondary packaging here. So basically, right, for primary and secondary is what you see, you know, what is sold to you. So whatever you see in retail shops that you buy, you know, for example, your carton of drinks. So these are considered primary and secondary products. You need to report these products, you know, for this reporting. And for tertiary wise, there's, unless it's used for like if it's used for logistic purposes, you know, like transportation purposes, for storage purposes, then you do not need to report. Just remember that, okay? Because some of you thought that these are also included, but no, they are actually not included. Yeah. And of course, for the procedure wise, you have this entire year to collect the data, and your reporting actually, you know, by next year, end of March, you have to submit your packaging data and the 3R plans with the supporting documents. So actually, you have by right a whole year from now on, yeah, to do your data collections. And this part here, because I have met many of you, right, who actually wants to now I want to say is this, like, okay, this is something that you have to submit for your reporting purpose, but actually there's more work, you know, to beyond this lah. So basically, I wanted to highlight a few key points that probably may help you in future, so that you can be ready for this submission. Yeah. The first thing is setting the boundary, and for this part, because now for this part, the geographical locations, of course, the products are only in Singapore's business operation, because I have some asking me that, oh, you have businesses in Malaysia, you know, in also Indonesia, then what about those? But no, those products do not need to be reported. So only those that is being supplied or imported or manufactured within Singapore's business operation. Yeah. And the thing is, to be clear, is also the, you know, products, you have to be clear on what needs to be reported, you know, because, you know, for example, the e-waste also need the 5 regulated products. Yeah. For packaging, you have to report all except those listed in the exclusion list. So do take note of that, because there is still a lot of confusion out there that what needs to be reported and what does not, which items do not need to be reported. Yeah. Number two is resources, because this is also an important factor for you to consider. As I noted that you may have to think of what resources you are going to put in. You probably need to have a budget, whether to involve an internal team or outsource to consultants like us to help to ease the pain. Yeah. So is the management willing to provide sufficient budget to truly develop this into a sustainable practice for your company business operation? Also is something that you may have to consider, because don't take this as one extra duties for your company, but actually, in fact, you should make this into something that will help your business operation in the long run. Okay. Second point here is about the manpower. So do you have is there a team to execute this task? Through the interaction with some of you, right? Actually, I know that you have to get from many departments to be involved, because most of you are taking care of, most of you are probably from logistic departments, but you have to get inputs from sales and then from other suppliers as well, so that you can consolidate the data for that final list that you have to submit. So it's not just a simple task of consolidating, but you need to have coordinate different parties together, so that you can have your final results or the final figures to help you in your reporting. Yeah. Then the third point here is the time. Okay, because do you have like a system in place to support the data collection? Because just now from the questions, some of you, I know probably you have a system in place already, then that's fine. You may also have a team ready to do that. That's really good. But for those of you who doesn't have or have not done so, you probably need to think about producing that a system that may help you to actually to collect the data efficiently. Yeah. And you have to plan towards a more feasible schedule, because do not just wait for the final 3 months, then you start to do the data collection. No, you have a whole year to do, and now it's already in April. You have 8 more months to the end of the year. So make use of this period to do a proper planning, that how you want to carry out this thing, because and also try to think it as a more long-term approach. For a business operation point, it will become like a 3 to 5 year strategy plan. You should build this into your business operation, so that in the long run, it not only helps to reduce your waste, but also help your company to save costs as well. Yeah. And the third point here is the source of data. And because I understand that you need to internally, sort out all the data, because internally you need to know which department will have the data, and then externally you also have to retrieve your data from upstream value chain and the downstream value chain. So you have a lot of involvement in all those different suppliers, recycle contractor if you have. So you need to have actually a team to manage all these processes. And you need to be clear where is the data source supporting the information needed for the submission. That's something that you have to think about when you go about doing this reporting. So I suggest that you should have a system platform in place to track the waste reduction and its performance, because in the end, for packaging waste, you have to submit your 3R plans, and for the coming years, you have to monitor the KPIs that you set for your waste reduction program. So it's better that probably at the start, it's good for you to set up a system platform to manage all this, to retrieve data easily, to track the waste reduction, and also monitor its performance in future. So use the analytical data wisely, because these data can actually help you to come up with a feasible and very good 3R plans in future. The 3R plans that you have to do, it's not only the 7 steps that you just choose, but if you, with the right data you have, and you've analyzed them correctly, and do a 3R plans with a proper data guidance, then it will help your businesses in the long run. And I'm sure that not only reduce the waste, but also save costs. Yeah. So my last point here is that treat treat this reporting as not only to fulfill the submission requirement, but as an opportunity to build and integrate as part of your company's sustainable approach to save costs, reduce waste, and lower the carbon footprint and emission. So with that, I thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, you can just email me or ask in the question. Yeah, thank you so much.
Here is a comparison of their technology, which is the far right side corner of the slide, called molecular or chemical recycling method, how it compares with the other methods. So this is a glimpse of passionate individuals running technology startups in Singapore, incubated by different funding agencies. And I'm glad to see such companies are taking root and growing in Singapore. Given the National Zero Waste Plan, I would believe these companies would slowly progress towards a solution providers for Singapore and beyond. I'm also involved in writing media articles for Straits Times as well as other media outlets in Singapore. On the right side, it's a book on circular economy. Tan Sen Chuan introduced the concepts of circular economy, how different organizations, the kind of emphasis. And this book will provide those who are totally unfamiliar with this area. This is a 600-page volume written by the experts and would be a very helpful document in case you need a reference. Now, this webinar is focused on mandatory waste reporting, and my title of talk is related to the manufacturing waste. So in order to provide the context, I have taken this definition of mandatory waste reporting by the manufacturing companies as per the NEA document. So it refers to the factories and premises which has a particular gross floor area defined in terms of warehouses, manufacturing centers, exhibition and convention centers, and who are come under this mandatory waste reporting requirement in Singapore. So now, to make the whole point in a pictorial way, mandatory waste reporting is designed to reduce cost and expand value streams. So that's the primary intent of our Singapore plan for mandatory waste reporting. So now, what is the voice? What's the feeling on the manufacturing industries? As defined in the previous slide, you see, they do see the right side boxes after the business process, especially waste management. Most companies, small and medium enterprises, still regard them as a cost. On the right side, I have given a list of waste products, solid waste, that comes out from these premises. That involves paper, cardboard, metals, plastic, glass, food, and wood and other material systems. Now, what I intend to do is to wear the hat of Institution of Engineers Singapore, where I chair a technical committee on manufacturing, sustainable manufacturing. So when I look around and the kind of feedback we receive from different SMEs and MMEs, I could give a list of challenges, what we call obstacles or pain points. I color coded them so that it's easier for you to track these pointers. So for example, they still have challenges in gathering data and also segregating based on the amount of waste of the specific type of waste that is generated in the manufacturing premises as defined in the previous slide. And they also have a challenge in understanding deeply how these wastes are generated, why they are commingled or contaminated, and there are issues related to collection, sorting, labeling. At the same time, ability to provide and support waste audits that might take place, and also engaging appropriate waste collectors, recyclers on a specific arrangement, and also a lack of domain infrastructure and a space for managing waste much more effectively. There are also concerns from some companies in terms of data transparency because they do not like to share this information with the competitors. There is also a question of quality of reporting. They also desire cross-sectoral collaboration, what we call industrial symbiosis. And there are issues related to the compliance documentation and the complexity of sustainability regulations. There are concerns about how to adopt digital solutions and costs associated with them. Some people have concerns about confidentiality issues and cybersecurity. There are other issues that are surfaced. These companies lack domain expertise, adequate digital skills, also measuring indicators against set goals. There are challenges in terms of data visualization, real-time processing, and transparency of information and bookkeeping. So in a manufacturing sector, how do you connect the information that is coming out from different parts of manufacturing so that this particular data is collected dynamically, continuously, in a transparent way? There are issues related to the clear and accurate analysis for decision making, especially by the leaders of the companies, and real-time sustainability performance. There are also challenges in terms of trustworthy sustainability information for rejigging own products and processes. That's because there's a lot of information available on sustainability credentials of materials and processes. But for management to make decisions, they need this information, which is much more curated and more useful, and so that they can make the decisions. Other challenges involves data points of comprehensive knowledge of products, components, and waste streams. So they need to have a better comprehensive knowledge across the factory line as well as supply chains, so that they can better understand how they should proceed and create a value out of this new methodology. There are also challenges in terms of realistic strategies, management platforms for resource optimization. And there in bottom, I have also identified a few other challenges that include setting reuse and recycling targets, rank and rate these options, and assess the scope of cost benefit savings. This is also a challenge for some of the SMEs and MMEs. And how do you actually go about designing to reduce the waste at the source, as well as in the case of multi-tenant industrial space, how do you get the buy-in of the tenants so that you are complying with the mandatory waste reporting as well as progressing in sustainable way? So qualified 3R leaders in SME is also a kind of challenge for some of the companies. So my main purpose of showing this slide is to put together a diverse set of feedback we have been receiving from different manufacturing companies. In some sense, all those pointers resonate with the poll survey we just collected, and these are the results of the poll survey. I would not go through these poll results one by one because there are other speakers and they need time to engage you. But essentially, if you look at the survey which we just conducted, resonates with the kind of questions and challenges and pain points I summarize here. And there's also other set of poll results which we just received from all of you. Thank you for participating in that poll survey. I just want to say you are not alone. Worldwide, if you see, for example, set targets for recycling and how these companies are falling behind, this seems to be an issue for many global companies. But the good news is, if you are traveling in this direction, I'm sure there are other countries which are also have a similar mandatory requirements in terms of the waste and sustainability. And here is a snapshot of what's going on in ASEAN and Greater Asia. So if you are an SME or MME or MNC, if you decide to more strongly embrace this direction, I'm sure that down the line, it would add more business value to your organizations. And before this seminar, few weeks ago, we had SG Innovate conducted a manufacturing trends webinar where I conducted a poll survey. You can see fellow manufacturing companies, how they think in terms of what is very important. And it's clear in the medium term, they all think sustainability thinking is necessary for their own operations. And my last slide, I just want to say, thank you for this opportunity to engage you. And I think we need to walk this sustainability path, and mandatory waste reporting as well as EPR, extended producer responsibility, are taking root. And I think it is advisable for all SMEs to take an active role and find your own way. We are here to work with you and encourage you. Thank you so much.